Pushing through the production action, a number of people pull that out. The Khmer, they had the most interesting because they have this mercenaries card here. Let me see if I can find it. It allows you to buy anything that's within range of you that you could trace, basically. So they would have been able to buy things from the Javanese, which is important because Java, and they might have actually also been in range. Yeah, they're also in range of the Tang. Either one would give them the ability to buy these cool Uber artillery. The problem is that they had all their catapults on the board, so it would mean dismantling stuff. Because they're a democracy, they were able to buy lots of units cheaply because they had been attacked recently. I think. I'm not sure. But anyhow, they ended up producing a bunch of stuff, and they got some big boats and such not. They have a big city here, so they were able to build a huge pile. They're not going to be able to attack back with them, though, unless purple provokes them some more. Basically, they have to accept the losses that they took by taking a production turn. That's one of the problems with democracy. You can become an arsenal and defend yourself, or you can offend, but you can't keep pressing the attack. You can't do the USA type unconditional surrender action without taking huge penalties to your glory, which of course you wouldn't want to do. I'm not sure, how much that actually applies to, say, the Greek democracies. They seemed quite willing to expand into Asia Minor, but not enough so that they would have taken the whole area. So, and also the turns, who knows how long they are, but a given turn seems to me that it's at least 10, 20 years, which is, enough time. It's not like you sweep over Europe, conquer everything, and then hold it as the U.S. in World War II, right? Maybe. I don't know how you want to define that. Anyway, other productions, the Vikings and the Portuguese both cranked up their production. Now, the Vikings have feudalism, so they were able to build, and they actually both had a wad of extra money left, and shit, I think I spent all this. I'm always forgetting when there's little tracks. They don't work as well for me as a paper and pencil system. I know for most people, paper and pencil is so much worse, but I just screw up all the time with little tracks. Forget to move something. But both of them have kind of been able to produce quite richly. The Portuguese have Christianity, so they advanced into a new area before they took the production turn, getting some more income too. The real goal on pink here is to try to wipe out blue value. There's blue value here, there's blue value here. Blue's in the lead. I'm in the position to do it. I gain by doing it. It's what I want to do. All right, so we move to trade. My playing is starting to slow down. I've decided to find other things to do. Not in general, just whenever a game hits a certain point where I've played it for enough time, I get fatigued. I get fatigued of the game. I'll catch second wind with really long games, but something like this just kind of hits that point where, yeah, I've put in, God knows, 10 hours of video, basically. Now, I'm not saying that I've put in 10 hours of play. I say my videos probably take about twice as long as it takes me to play, probably, with a game of this nature. As opposed to, say, something like CWB, where I just come back, the Civil War Brigade series, where I just come back and say, yeah, we had this kind of movement here, and I spent maybe 15, 20 minutes on a turn, and it takes me 2 minutes to describe. Here, I feel like you lose all the story if you don't catch the little pieces. I mean, I could just say, yeah, we got the Russians sweeping across the map again. That's the big story for this turn, but I don't know. It feels like their story is so intertwined in every play, much like with a Euro. For good or ill, that bloats the size and time of the video coverage. The only people doing trade in progress were the Tang, who pushed their way out of a dark age, and up to horse artillery, and the Arabs, who unfortunately tied with the Saxons, so nobody gets any movement here. Ugh. Crappy, crappy, crappy. Unless I'm wrong. I have a scientist. I think they have something to do with trade. So maybe I've got some ability that helps me there. I can play 2 cards with trade. Yeah, so I gotta think I may be giving a different... I had a crappier card that I would rather give up if I'm not going forward. I don't really terribly care if the Saxons increase their progress. I wanted my own to increase so that I can start getting cooler stuff. The Saxons are Islamic, so they're not really a threat to me. Saxons committed different attacks here. Out against the Russians, they just basically swept through. Remember, the Russians are all spread out and they're losing everything in Europe because of it. With the 1 glory per space, we got the Saxons just cranking points there. Unfortunately, even though they sent about 4 units in here, they got defeated twice by the Danes. This fort didn't hurt one bit in that defense. And they would have really liked to have dug Denmark out of its home, because not that they particularly want to beat the Danes, but I'm sorry, the Vikings. Yeah, the Vikings are in Denmark. And they're Danes, okay. But just, it would have been cool to gain the extra glory, and that was basically the best place they could attack. Well, they probably had a good chance at attacking something like this with the 2 units there, but they had a lot of force they could push into here. And if they could have done that, then they could have pushed against the... well, this ship would have had to... No, it wouldn't have to get out of there. I was going to say I would have to get out of there, but no, it's a regular navy. But basically they're looking towards trying to regain control of Britain. If they could get another piece, a naval unit in the North Sea, then they would tie the English there. And, you know... just do a lot of devastation to some of the other powers. But the English and the Vikings, neither one of them are really the people who are in the anywhere near the lead. They're the 2 bottom players. So picking on them doesn't seem terribly valuable anyway. Hitting the Russians, though, definitely got me some points. I mean, I'm in the lead and I can't reach blue. So this is the most reasonable. I'll spare it out a little bit there. Really not able to do a whole hell of a lot, but they're worth a couple of points, and as long as I have the top money, that goes up to 4 points. So they're, you know, not a bad generator right now in terms of victory points. They're just not able to do much on the board. On the other hand, over here, something that's not a great generator of points is getting bigger and bigger in the world as they spread their boats around more. Now they're really spread thin, so somebody can hammer the crap out of them, but they've just charged into the Vietnamese and taken most of it out. They're down to just this areas out here, which I think is worth crap to them. 2 pieces in Asia, that's not going to give them anything. So Vietnam's pretty much on the ropes now. They were going away anyway, which is something, you know, which wasn't absolutely obvious, but and now I'm sitting on more territory in Southeast Asia and southern China that I don't necessarily want with the Indians. But basically I couldn't attack the Khmer. They were too strong. So, you know, I went for the other guy, the guy who's even a point ahead of them, to try to knock him down further. To finish off the maneuver segment, the Russians take back Moscow. They need to rebuild their capital with a civilized action before they can do any production. And they also punch their way into Deccan with some heavy force, threatening all of India. Now that's really kind of in a sense, these purple were doing this action of attacking in kind of a thought towards, you know what, we got to trash other people's stuff with this, and then we'll go into, you know, we'll probably be dissolving. Well, the Russians are going to help them along in that way. I don't know how much money or how many points they're due for. They may well be getting a big chunk of those world points. I got to look I think the Arabs are going to clear up their disorder problem completely. They've got a couple missing. Otherwise, there are some other big empires, so it's going to come down to account, see who's doing the best. And if I can't get in the top 2 in the world, it's just not worth keeping this sucker alive any longer. It's been kind of a point drain. The Hausa, on the other hand, producing great points without any board presence whatsoever. All right, everybody made a destiny draw this time, including Blue, who passed on their Native Americans essentially to take it. They have some real problems with that empire, actually. But it's still producing points. Green played a card that allows you to draw 3 extra cards, so they have like 9 cards in their hand now. That's a really potent position, especially since they're going into a civilized action. And again, the Arabs had one that allowed them to discard up to 3 of their draws and replace them. They ended up taking 2 of those and have a pretty good hand. They've also got this Karma card. It's Benin that's going to be doing the civilized action, but they can play events on others, and the Karma event allows them to remove all disorder from an empire. That'll fix the Arab problem. All right, let's go on with the civilized. Well, the English civilization event didn't go too well. They got themselves a city and a leader, of course. The leader's a religious leader, which makes them immune to certain... Well, it allows 2 things. One, it allows them to play with destiny events, slipping them to the bottom of the deck on their discards, and then they can draw off of either the regular deck or the discard pile, if I can remember that. And their city. They also played this just rule, which gives them a glory point and makes them immune to a bunch of icky events. Not really a tremendous bonus overall for them, but I'm not quite sure why they were doing civilized. Oh, I know why. So I'm holding this, not that. I was holding this capitalism card, and I wanted capitalism. You need Industrial Revolution to get it. So I discarded everything but the capitalism to go for it, and I didn't get an Industrial Revolution. I'm actually not sure why, that's why I was doing this. May have just been tired when I picked, but capitalism allows you to play 2 cards in your own trade in progress action and then decide which one to use at any time. If you also have a scientist, you could play the second card from the deck and then decide which one to use. Oh, that sounds... Isn't that what the scientist does? Yeah, okay. So it doesn't sound terribly useful. The other one goes back to your hand, so you gain a card each time you trade if you have both, which would have been good for them. You also get glory when you win trades. If the trade was in your own trade progress, you gain additional money. That's an ability a lot have. And you can either take the money from the empire that lost the trade or from the bank. You have to choose to do it wholly from one or the other, but it is your choice. And if it's another capitalist empire, you get to take double the money. Big complex thing there. Capitalism is, I believe, a type of government. They unfortunately don't label things in that way, but it's in the same pile as socialism, and it has the requirement that you have to have no government. Now let me see. Feudalism, you have to have no government. So if you have a government or religion, remember you can kind of discard it just before you take it. So it's just a matter that you're only allowed one. It's not a requirement that you can't get it if you have the government, but you need the Industrial Revolution to get capitalism. So we're not going to get that there. Has a problem. I'm considering democracy, but that's a really terrible thing to go with Islam, which I'm also considering. The reason I want Islam is because, geez, I'm really good at conquering stuff, right? That it looks like there's going to be a lot of territory, a lot of glory. I'm going to hold off on democracy because that penalizes me if I attack people. Democracy kind of cancels out any advantage that I get from having Islam, and I think I want to gain Islam instead. This is going to be for the Russians. Now here's the problem. It's the Irish who are playing the card. who are playing the civilized action, not the Russians. Oh boy. On the bright side, if I take a Russian civilized action next time, I could actually discard democracy, I think, without a problem. Because when you discard a religion, when you discard a religion, if I can find it, no, it's only by replacing a religion that you can discard it. But the advantage to that, still, I could still do it. It looks like you always get the glory point for putting down those religions and governments. I haven't been playing it that way. But if you do it with the adopt, you can get it. So changing religion all the time is kind of cool. You get a disorder in every area containing a city or a leader, which wouldn't be that big a deal for the Russians because they have none of that. So probably putting I'm not going to change the rules at this point that I'm playing by. I'll figure that's just a modification I've been playing with. But I think I'll play the democracy on the Russians because they can discard it for free next turn when they civilize. Nah, I can do better than that. So the reason I can discard it next time when they civilize is they have feudalism in their hand. They would need a new government to replace the democracy. So they're going to briefly be democracy in order to get the victory point, and then they're going to switch to feudalism next turn so that they can be an Islamic nation and still get all the advantages. There's no little asterisk on the Industrial Revolution, but Industrial Revolution, most things with an asterisk indicate they can be had at other times, that they have other effects. Industrial Revolution can be done in Area 5. Again, the game doesn't support anything for the players to help understand. If the target empire has printing, well, printing is a blue counter out here, which the British are above, so they would have gotten it. I'm in the middle of something else and trying to handle this because I ran into it. So I'm going to be picking up Industrial Revolution and capitalism. Industrial Revolution is going to double the income from every city, and we already talked about capitalism, but perhaps more importantly, in a sense, we get 2 glory for the Brits. And I hope I didn't move red up because red looks British to me. And I'll get the counters in place because 7, this is going to be, Industrial Revolution is going to be up here. It's a blue counter, so it has a blue one as well. Hey, while I'm doing that, I might as well grab Islam because I'm planning on conquering some things. Of course, these might convert, and that's going to cause problems. But yeah, I'm kind of planning on conquering things. Well, just trying to make sure that nobody's going to be able to hand that off. So, in particular, pink isn't going anywhere. Blue, the Vietnamese have a counter. If they've got a civilized counter, they're too far away. It's only 3 areas. 1, 2, 3. They can make their way around the world. They're too far away to change that. So I want to get some glory points off the Islam. And then, of course, maybe I'll change religions or something at some point. But as of right now, Islam makes a lot of sense. And it's making a lot of sense for everyone. I'm able to get it because, at the very least, the Saxons have it, but I can probably make it someplace else that has it as well. Okay, what a mess. All right, so the democracy was played, as I mentioned, on the Russians. The tribute was also played on the Russians. This I could have played anywhere on the board. I'm putting it between these. It gives them an extra buck when they do production. I played the Renaissance event on the Russians. I can't play it. This is the way I'm reading this. It could be these blue things can't be replayed, but my view is you shouldn't be able to play them without effect. So I couldn't play them on Ireland because they already have the Renaissance, but the Russians do not. So by giving them the bonus, as long as the counter is available, and they've got to play it someplace, they played it here, I'm able to gain the glory for that. And whatever the advantages for Renaissance are, which I can't bloody well remember. Then I played Religious Strife over on the Saxons, so they're no longer completely Islamic. They're not going to be able to go charging into Russia, for example, on their next turn in order to gain more points. How much value is that? Well, if they do a trade next turn, they'll be bumping their way through and getting rid of that. And finally, concentric ownership over on the Native Americans to make the cost of building new units higher. But most importantly, perhaps, to drop the glory of those two empires. And that is green civilized action. Oh, God. Sorry, no, that wasn't all of it. Of course, they got a leader, they got to urbanize, and they actually bought off the disorder for $7. They had a pile of money that I had. This was actually why they were doing this. I wonder if the English had some reason they really wanted to, but I can't figure one out. All right, on to Benin, who is civilizing as well. Benin's card plays, of course, they did the thing with the Arabs. They played a couple of copper mines for some quick money. You know. Sure, it's getting rid of stuff that maybe would have some use to them, but probably not. I mean, without an event, they're not going to have something they can do. They're not starting an empire, and they can't use either of the things. They played urban riots over on the Khmer, and that reduced the cities of the Khmer. Assuming there's not a populist here. There was one, and now there's one over here, so I couldn't do Ireland, which would have also been an option. That got two territories in disorder from that, as well as reducing the cities, so the Khmer are in worse shape. It's going to affect their points, too, because they can't count these disordered areas. So that's a really, really nasty card. They didn't have anything to go against it. And then they tried to play a Pestilence. You know, they probably would have been better off going after blue since they just cut some of gray's points. But they went after the Saxons because two things. One, the Saxons are gray. They're in one of the leading positions. Of course, the blue are ahead, and that's why I said they probably should have. But secondly, that would give the Saxons are Islamic, and that would give me some space to maybe move around and do stuff. That totally failed, though. Might have succeeded against the natives. Threw their leader away because he didn't get a chance to move, and ended up drawing a no leader counter. Benin only has allowed one leader here. And finally they built their city up. They get more by building from level 1 up to level 3 than having lots of level 1 cities for whatever reason. Well, they didn't build them both. No disorder to remove, no modernizing or anything like that. So, let's see, it looks to me like that's the end of the civilized fashion. We'll get to the disorder, but I need to break, or the discard, but I need to get out of here. I forgot to mention, I picked up a religion. I picked up Islam with Benin. Islam's just the god religion. The problem is most people, like the early era of the game, will have the Romans spread Christianity. Islam's more powerful in a lot of ways, though. And honestly, I think that you're going to see most games, it becomes more powerful than Christianity. Christianity is great if there's nothing around you. But if anybody's around you, it's much better to be gaining the glory from Islam. So this does two things. One, it gives me the opportunity to attack the Hansa and beat them back. The second is, if the Hansa adopted Islam and I don't have it, they can gain glory by hitting me. But if they adopt it now, in some sort of defense of themselves, well, then they won't be attacking me, and that's good. You know, I've got the majority of Africa right now. I can call myself peaceful. So that's, you know, kind of this the Hausa, not Hansa, are now going to be put in a tricky position where they have to make their own decision. And they're not even top in money because I've pushed them over there. Again, maybe an attempt to try to force them to dissolve so that, you know, I get rid of that problem in my midst. Because that's a problem both for the Arabs and for them. Anyway. Okay, and the Vietnamese disappeared. Yeah. And in exchange, I had the Phoenix card, so the Persians came up. Now the Persians, you can see they've already got themselves an empire. They get a free maneuver. They get the elite marker. They get a free maneuver after they set up. They're going to get +1 to any horse archer support value if they end up putting any out. But right now, they're going with high tech because they're way up here. And they've pretty much carved themselves a chunk out of the Arabs. How good are they? 1 point they're going to get for their home area. They like grain, but they're going to have a tough time getting it unless they can keep fighting the Arabs there. The Arabs are kind of spread out, though, and this is pretty potent. One thing that it definitely does, though, is, you know, I mean, I would have liked to have hit gray. I could have taken the Ottomans. That would put me closer. I think they start here. But their card wasn't as good overall from what I could see. And this will give me a shot at green heading up this way and knocking on the Russians. Key point, I'm not Muslim yet. I do want to be perhaps at some point, but only once I'm humongous. Because right now, everything's Islamist, and there's no real big advantage to trying to grow a new empire, where I was in a situation where both of the choices, the Ottomans also want to be a large Islamic empire. They have more interest in Europe instead of the grain. You know, it's hard to tell which is going to be more valuable. I think there are other people with more grain at this point. It's hard to tell. I don't see one. I think everybody's got kind of one grain. So in a sense, you know, with Egypt here available with some... Oh, no, not everybody's got one. The Irish only have one. I was going to say some people have the ability to use the Woods grain, but not many. I would be one. Chinese would, but the Chinese have a lot of grain available though, so it's going to be tough for me to get that. And right now the turn marker's over here. The Saxons do not... Oh, no, they have one here. I was going to say they don't have one. So I'm not going to get the first place in the grain unless I had a philosopher. And actually, I believe... Nope. I was going to say, I think the Arabs have actually. Sicily has a lot of grain. Maybe not anymore at this point in the game, but they certainly did in Roman times. They were one of the major... I mean, before Egypt, Sicily was Rome's supply source for wheat. All right, I guess we go to the end of turn stuff. It is trying to get away with playing I Am Truly Glorious and Expanded Glory. These work kind of weird. So, I Am Truly Glorious doubles the glory earned by the Empire, and that's how I've been running both of these. But Expanded Glory is actually subtly different. It actually explains it in the white text underneath that you can almost read. In this case, what you do is you double the numbers on here, which means not only... So anything with a number, you'd get... If you were due the amount from the number, you would get double the value. But it also means that you might be eligible even if you're further behind. I have to decide what empire, but I probably am going to throw it both on whichever empire is the richer to begin with, and I'm not going to put too much thought. You can't go counting around to try to figure out, hey, which one is, you can't optimize this, is part of the rules. How you prevent someone from doing that? Well, I guess you slap them upside the head. You know, I don't know what else you can do. Even though red's so far behind, the Arab Benin player is not going to allow both of them. So I canceled the harder to deal with one that's actually more valuable, probably. So I'll just double the value of someone's glory. I'm not sure which one. Actually, for the other event, the English are doing a blowback to aim it at them. So they get additional points as well, instead of it going to red. And here's where we net out on points. Here's the progress. You see the Tang continuing to push into the 6th age, actually, which is kind of an interesting place to be. And over on the progress, blue being able to do this rebirth was really good. That pushed us ahead. Green lost points. The Russians are almost, I don't remember what they pulled this time. They don't have this. They don't have this. They're second, I think, in Asia, so that gives them 1 point net. You know, they're kind of a loser country. Oh, wait, they do have Moscow. That's 2 more points for green. Okay, so that puts them up to 3 points, and that's pretty good. Gray, the fallback of the Saxons hasn't really hurt them too much. They're not getting England anymore, though, so they're only worth 2 points for their big dominance in Europe. And in fact, I'm kind of worried that the Arabs might be ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3, 4, 5, 6. No, I don't have anything in disorder. Okay. Let's see. So we pushed some here. You can see the Arabs and Benin are making some good strides here. And the rest kind of falling behind. But in a cluster, and to tell you the truth, things like yellow and red made some ground up this time. Purple didn't terribly fall behind. The Indians here, they're biggest in the world, so we're talking 1, 2, 4 points for them. That's pretty decent. If that starts to fall, I think it's time to give them up. But you don't give up a 4-point producer, really. And the Hausa are also making a couple points. 1 point for their home area, 1 point for Africa. But they've kind of fallen behind because they're no longer the money princes. Now, how long can Benin and... Crap, I owe them a point. I spent that money. That was the initial starting for the Persians. So the Hausa actually gain a point for being second in money. Yep, that's not the Hausa. But yeah, you know, how long can they guarantee that they're up there? Because right now, they can guarantee their 2 points. And if they can keep that money in place, they'll be at 4 points. Nobody's really targeting them there. That's one of the questions is, you know, how much are people going to target things? So Greens is one of the leading powers. But if a big country goes Christian, that costs them a point every turn. So if you want to be kind of dicky to someone, you could certainly do that. I don't know if there are any big powers available to go Christian. Not bigger than the Irish. The Irish have kind of started growing. I mean, there's some Muslims that could. Obviously, the Russians could, but they're not going to. I guess if this does, but it's got a religion. You know, when you've got a religion, it's a lot more questionable to start changing. Especially if you're not, you know, like the Russians are going to be able to change their either religion, which they don't have. Well, they're planning on taking Islam, but they've got to change their government form to make that make sense. So they may well do that, but as of right now, it doesn't really hurt them with no leaders and no cities. It's pretty easy to change a nomadic people. All right, on to the next. So as we start a new turn, I ran through some of the production. In some cases, you know, smaller empires not able to put out a lot of new forces. In particular, I look at the Hausa, but they had some significant money in their hand and a mobilization event, which would have allowed them to overproduce in terms of, normally they could only produce 4 units in this region. Problem is they have a desire for being the greatest in cash. Right now they're in second place. They were up here after their production cash and turned it in to make sure they stayed in second place. There's no guarantee, you know, that they won't be surpassed or that they won't end up in first place, but they've got this kind of hard choice facing them. Hey, do I want to build up a fairly big army and start chunking into Benin, but actually reduce my victory points by doing so, at least in the short term, and probably in the long term as well? Or do I want to take advantage of my big pile of money right now to garner an extra glory each turn and just say, you know, if I can gain a territory, that's fine. But the problem is I can't pass through these territories without mass migrations in order to attack the weaker underbelly of Benin. So they're able to block me here and here. And it's very difficult for me to make attacks against larger stacks of units in good terrain or whatever. You really kind of have to actually, I'm going to put this here. You really kind of have to set yourself up in a position that you could attack the weaker stuff. Otherwise, you end up leaving units behind. Now, I may end up grabbing something like Niger in order to attack and take away some of the territory, just because I'm having to do this on the cheap. The Irish used their production to build up some boats, and then used a rare conjunction which allows them to move a second time. And you can see they're starting to send missionaries out all over the world. They also launched an attack on the Saxons, trying to reduce them. Overall, they see the Saxons as a real threat to their Russians. And yes, they've got them kind of stymied with the religious strife right now, but they want to get rid of them. They did open up some risks, though, and with Green in the lead, that was probably a mistake, leaving a lot of areas kind of empty. Remember, if they start losing fertile regions, they start getting unrest in their cities, and that's going to be tougher for them to deal with. On the other hand, they did get the bonus of lots of places that they can start sending their missionaries out. They've been hemmed in with no neutral areas next to them for a while now, and that's actually, they had this. They could have built a unit there and spread into Austria, but you know, that's been kind of disturbing them. Even though it doesn't matter too much, they don't really care about they don't really care about the value of the world. The only thing they care about is being the biggest Christian empire, and they pretty much have that for a while until the Portuguese or someone else ends up you know, exceeding their size. And by putting Christians over here, they might be helping Native Americans become Christian, although they're more likely to become Muslim. They kind of have to worry about what the effect of Christianizing means. There's no real great advantage for it for most countries, though, at this point. Islam is the more powerful thing, both on offense or defense. Christianity is only really useful if you have a lot of space to expand into. Okay, and as we spin through the rest of the production, first I screwed up and tried to do Benin's production just because I have these kind of ordered differently and wrong. It was actually the Arabs that did the production, so I'm hoping I got the money right. You know, it's not worth reviewing on the tape, although I could. Arabs built up a lot of defense work up against the Persian incursion. Saxons played mechanical marvel so that they could build things 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces further along. Now, I'm going to building that, I could have built an artillery. Could have built one of these instead of the cav, but I built the cav and I'd have a buck left. But the main reason for that was so that I could build some of these more modern ships and face the Danes with that, thereby perhaps getting myself back in control, and maybe the English as well, back in control of Britain. That's my other 2 points. You know, there's multiple different ways to get around things, but as you can see, the Irish are kind of pushing hard into us. We may not be the top guy in Europe soon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, it's getting close. And the Arabs are kind of big there too, as they're getting pushed out of here. That puts us to trade in progress, and I definitely... There was no trade, however. Here's a cool card that I've never used, and this time I actually caught it almost in time. As the English were about to do a maneuver action, the blue player throws down an alliance action. They're not going to be able to use this Islam piece for... They could use it for the Persians to get a glory point, but that would screw the Persians over. They can't use it for the North Americans. They're too far away from Medina. So they're going to use it for the alliance ability, which means they get to pick what the English do in terms of an action instead of maneuver. And this happens kind of out of order, obviously, because you're trumping their action. So by playing it as in the maneuver phase, I'm forcing the English to do something. Now, what do I particularly want the English to do? Well, I'm in the lead. I think I want to make them do a trade in progress, especially since they don't have a lot of cards. They may not do it with me, but their best choices would be, looks like yellow or pale blue. Pale blue is going to be too far away. Yellow is going to be too far away. So now I look for someone. I might pick on the Saxons, although the Saxons are also doing well in points, and I'm not sure I want to bump them up. So I'll come back after I figure. I actually did it to the Arabs. It used up my one card, which was a mass migrations, which I was really planning on using to fully invade the Native Americans here and help call them. This was going to be a pretty bad event for them, or action phase for them. So instead I ended up giving the Arabs a point, which gets them out of a dark age, no question there. But I don't view that as too terrible a situation. They're a little further behind. It's not going to hurt too much. Purple would have been another interesting option. It could have helped the Hausa, but it helps them more in some ways. So this seemed like the safest of the alternatives. And the only problem is the Arabs have like a +1 or +2 on trade, so I had almost no chance of a success of my own. Maneuver with the Vikings, and it was also targeted against blue. They launched a lot of forces against the Portuguese here and failed in both cases. They also used a high command card, which let them peek at what the enemy was going to commit in forces. However, they did win up here and started cutting the natives down significantly, as they also expand some of their territory. But now they're kind of weakened in their South American capital. Yeah, you're going to have to look back to see how that happened. All right, let's see if... I'm sure there are more maneuvers. Price is being paid for as the Portuguese push against the Vikings here and are beginning to cut up their main territory in South America. Likewise, though, that was using a wild card action, which is safe because I have democracy here. The Persians also gained one space against the Arabs. It's becoming tough. You know, if somebody decides to defend it, it isn't impossible to defeat them in a battle, but it becomes tougher. You have to choose your battle carefully, and you end up spreading yourself out as you pick a big pile. I probably spread myself out too much. In this case, I probably should have defended Mesopotamia a little more, maybe Assyria, because that's the borderline. These artillery here, I don't feel too comfortable with them alone in the mountains. but I needed the infantry for the attack. And, you know, I'm starting to chip away the fortified center of the Arab state, which is something I really need to do in order to obtain the grain spaces that I desire. And we finished the maneuver up with the Khmer, whose main purpose was to get rid of the unrest they had kicking around in a couple of their territories, but they also used it to make a quick landing here at Mindanao, and to grab the Bay of Bengal from the Indians. Remember, they can't attack on land because they're a democracy, but they can try to take control of a sea area, which they did. Basically, they can't clear out the Southeast Asian areas that were taken from them. There haven't been any attacks in the last turn, so yeah, they can go for positional advantage. And next time they maneuver, well, they'll probably be spreading out into here, maybe grabbing more territory if it's still available. Basically, they want to come in on that first place in Southeast Asia if they can. If they can't, that's okay. That's not their big points come really from the artifacts, and they get a point for their home area. So, you know, they're looking at 3 points right now as long as they stay alive. And that's a pretty good deal. It's not fantastic, but it's good enough. As I move my way through the destiny phase, I get to the Russians, who are going to be civilizing, and I see jihad, and I'm planning on becoming Muslim, so maybe that'll be an appropriate thing. Well, jihad doesn't appear to work well. You put the jihad artifact in any land area adjacent to the target empire that a non-Islamic empire controls, removing the artifact immediately if the area becomes Islamic or controlled by an Islamic empire. An Islamic empire without Renaissance that does anything other than maneuver loses 3 glory points. However, if the jihad is on the map, all Islamic units in that and every adjacent area add +1 to their front line and support values. Sounds to me like you give the glory point to the empire that's going to be hit with the jihad. Now, by my understanding of this, I can place the jihad over here. It's adjacent to the Arabs. Boom, I convert to Islam. Later in my civilized phase, I've gotten the glory myself, and then it goes away. Weird? Yeah. In terms of artifact control, so some powers want more artifacts. It helps the guy who's got jihad being declared all over him. But it's the only way that I can justify how this particular power works. So I'm going to hold on to it. It sounds like it's an extra free glory point that I can play during my civilized. I'm not sure about that, because what I see here, only on an Islamic empire. The card is played on the Islamic empire. The Islamic empire is the one who's going to get the glory. So I think I'm going to pitch it, because it wouldn't come about until my next glory phase. So I'd get I could put it, say, after I become Islamic, on the Chinese here, and I'd get a point of glory myself for it, I guess. I don't know who owns the artifact. You feel like I do, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the way the rules seem to work, and certainly not with how I've interpreted them, but I have no idea how to make sense out of this card otherwise. But it seems like it's going to be useless. So our Indians did a civilization event. They took democracy for the point. Now again, remember, you can't just, the way I'm playing it, you can't just spread it for the points. So having the cards makes a difference from not having cards. And then I went through the remainder of their actions, upgrading a city, exchanged a strategist, and ended up with an explorer, which isn't really a good trade. I wanted the philosopher because victory points are the important thing. Then over on blue, the only card I played, I was kind of holding this because I thought it was the forum card. I thought I could get that. That unfortunately is here. Instead, I played the volcano, and I destroyed everything in Medina. that sets the progress of the Arabs back into a dark age again they had just crept out of. But it also gets rid of some of their territories, etc. Now, they're not in a terribly good location, but it seemed far and away sort of the most exciting thing I could do to them with blue. It's going to take away an area that directly impacts on sort of the thrust that the Persians are heading in. And one of the biggest effects is that it drops you back a progress. I had another card in there, the Revolution, that I could have played, but nobody seems to have any disorder, so I can't play it. Well, I do. And I followed up by adopting Islam with the Native Americans. That gives them the horrible Islam plus democracy combination, the dual builds. They got a nice leader, a philosopher, scientist. It's not such a bad event, such a bad combination for them, though, because they're terribly worried about the Brits who have Islam. And now the Brits won't be expanding into them. They'll probably end up migrating away. So I saved myself with the one card, the alliance with them, and now they're just going to depart and probably go deal with something else because they can't hit me anymore. Then over to the Russians. I played the little trick with them that I wanted to, although I forgot to build myself my capital. I haven't, actually I just have gotten to the cards, so I haven't gotten that far. This always confuses me. So they bought themselves feudalism with a card. They take no penalty because they have no leaders and no cities, so that's cool for them. What do they have here? Oh, they have the Renaissance there. So they ended up getting a point of glory off that. They tried, they have a couple of nasties in their hand, concentric ownership, religious strife. They can't play them. Only one place in the board can have those at any given time. Those are restricted to one empire at a time, and somebody has them already. Religious is over on the Saxons, and concentric ownership, I don't know where that is. This is rebellion. There's concentric ownership also on the Native Americans, which is going to make life hard for them. So there's not a lot I can do about that. And I'll continue with the rest. But I'm planning on building my capital in Muscovy now. And I was also planning on adopting, assuming there is one, an Islam counter. I'm running kind of low, though. And I may have, nope, there still is one. I'm worried that I may end up not getting, wanting it but not being able to take on a very popular thing like democracy or Islam. For Benin, I'm also doing something kind of cute here. I'm playing Chaos on myself. That sends me back a space. In progress, I am removing Islam from myself. It says you can just remove it from an empire. It doesn't have to be on the map. Okay. Then I'm playing Islam on myself. Getting myself a point of glory that way. I got to figure out what to do with these urban riots. I can do this to any empire, and it'll cause some significant disorder throughout. And looking at who's doing what, I decided to go after Portugal here. Drop their city down. I could have done the capital here in the gray camera as well. What I couldn't do was Ireland with their 5-point city. They have, I wouldn't get the full effect. I could reduce it, but the populace there would end up giving me no disorder. And a big reason for this is to put the disorder. Taking the city down is kind of minor. Whatever. So now I don't think anybody's being discarded at this point, which means I do the scoring crap. And yeah, I'm really slowing down. Yesterday, the day before, when I hit a civilized action, I would say, okay, I'll just run through the rest of the deck, or basically the rest of the turn, or basically even from Destiny I would run through. I need to get away from this now. Well, a bunch of Glory bonus cards came out. One by green, one by gray. Vizier scooped one back up. Blowback converted the green one over to gray. Gray was doing way too well. Saw Glory was canceled. Somebody had the ability to do that, and nobody had the ability to stop that. Well, Gray didn't have the ability to stop that anymore. So, no Glory. No guts. And I'm going to push this S down here in the beginning of another turn. In terms of progress, we see the Tanger stuck in this Dark Age. Pink and purple moved forward, which is meant that someone lost a leader. Purple had a leader here. I think they have another one. Unless there's a card that cancels that too, which maybe they have. I know it's out there. Okay, they do not. So, that's the end of the turn. This one's going up. You can see this is a hell of a long game, which has, in my case, overstayed its welcome.